Hello, everyone. Welcome to ECS 179 Gameplay Programming. Today, we're going to be talking about your game project. So, this is a very important part of the class. Here, we have the rest of the class to finish in a team the creation of a game. Now, this will likely just be an alpha or a prototype game. 5 weeks in a team is not a lot of time to make something meaningful. So keep that in mind. So scoping and adequately designing your game to have some bit of completion that can happen in 5-ish weeks is important. So that's the caveat at the very beginning. During lecture today, we'll be going through several game projects, along with finally doing our factory pattern, our factory exercise, spell factory exercise. We will be going through past games and showing you examples of really good projects. The projects have been getting better every year, partly because the class gets a little more nuanced and better every year, partly because computer scientists get a little better every year. But I think a lot of it has to do with the library of past projects I give you to help you set expectations, to help you match what you deliver to what's been delivered in the past, perhaps even to one up what's been there previously. So we will explore that today. One of the issues I'm dealing with is that there are actually too many good projects to show off in a class meeting. I've got this list of, just from the last 2 years, well over a dozen projects that all could be excellent examples for you. So we'll go over several of them. All right. So first, one place to go for information is the game project area in the syllabus. So first off, going through project group and registration spreadsheets. Go to the top here. It's fairly self-explanatory. I actually will probably change progress report to web playable, link to playable web version, so that change is incoming. So simply, when you want to register a team, take an open slot, add in your game name. The GitHub link can come a little later. So what we will need in the very near future, in a little over a week, will be your game name and your initial plan document. List your group members along with their UC Davis email addresses, and then you can pick a role. So we'll talk about the roles, but the predefined set of roles, there are 5 roles for main role and 5 roles for sub role. All of you will be multi-classing. Each person will have a main role and a sub role on the project, and we will grade you based on those roles and on the overall quality of the game, as well as the supplementary documentation such as initial plan, you're having a GitHub repository, progress report if we decide to have one, a link to the web playable, press kit. All of these will be part of the overall version of your grade, which is supplemented by your individual grades. Also about this document, there's a looking for group, which people have already been filling out, looking for members, and the past examples. So here are games from 2023. Notice that there will be roles here that you cannot select. A lot of these are custom roles, and last year we had teams of 6. This year we'll have teams of 5. So there was an extra role that I removed from the list. You can see their design documents. You can see their GitHub repositories. And many of them have playable versions, like Light in the Dark. A lot of them have web playable versions in the GitHub repository itself. So we have 2023 and 2022, all for you to check out. All right, so that's the basics of filling out the spreadsheet. Other The second link here is the initial plan document. This will be your first real deliverable for the class. And so the instructions are here in green. So you want to make your own copy of this document. You want to submit this in the spreadsheet, aka right here. You want to remove all the italicized text, including the green text. Change your prompts to match the teams. As we go through this, you'll see that it'll make sense. Visuals such as diagrams are very important. They can really help you communicate your design intent to us so we can look at the initial plan. And make sure you change the document title to reflect your game's name or project name. You know, this can drift over time. You are not set on an exact name right away. You can update, and you can even change the name of your GitHub repository to reflect your game. And you can remove this instruction text. You should remove this instruction text. So we want an idea of a core concept. So you should provide a synopsis for your game with approximately 150 words. Describe the core gameplay system of your game. So basically, what is the basic thing the player does? You can define this in genre or mechanics. We want to know actively what are the things players do. Explain your implementation plan. So, of course, this is an idea where I want you to have some nuanced thought on how your game is constructed. Ooh, I messed up my EG. There we go. There we go. Perfect. Thanks, Grammarly. I want you to have an idea of how you're going to go about the technical implementation of your game, how you are going to approach creating it within Unity. And why do you want to make this game? So what's appealing about it to you? Why even do this? Your idea should be exciting. It should excite you. It should excite me. Then I want you to explain your game and explain your gameplay and major game systems. And major systems that are composed in terms of other games and genres. So basically this is a related work section. So let's say you are making a 2D platformer with a bit of time and space warping. Well, you'd probably want to compare yourself to games like Braid. You'd want to compare yourself perhaps to something like Dead Cells or Hades. If you're a top-down isometric version of this 2D play. So this is where I want you to look at what other games are out there. So this is much like a related work section in many of the essays that you've done in class. Here I want you to actually link to other games and reference them. Then what other non-core gameplay features will your game have? So here you could have a supplementary item system, currency system, multiplayer aspects. Here we're thinking, this is making you think more about the scope of what you want your game to be. So here we want to document additional systems and look at your feature set past the core loop that you'd like your game to have. This is getting us thinking about scoping, about size of the game, about your implementation scale. Next, we go on to describing your team. So here's italicized text asking for what each member should provide. So basic contact information, your chosen role and sub-role, how confident are you on a scale of 1 to 5 for each. Explain your why you chose your role and sub-role. Describe what you hope to learn and accomplish as part of the team. And explain your anticipated challenges while performing as a member of your team. So each team member should fill in this section here. 1, 2. Okay, there's 5 of them. Excellent. And then scheduling. So you should provide a timeline for completing your work. The due date is the day after the final, so that's your end date. We'll give you, after the final play session, I will give you 24 hours to polish to clean up, to add your deliverables. Because many of you will be crunching just to get your game and your tasks done, and you won't have a lot, there may be less time than you'd like to actually compile your documentation to make your project deliverable documents in a polished way that you'd want to present yourself for something that's such a large part of a grade for a class. So we'll give you a bit of that. How would your game be if everything went as planned? What result if you lost? What would your game results be if you lost significant time? Like you lost 2 weeks. Maybe your producer got sick, or perhaps you had a really stressful time and needed a mental health break. What are your graceful fallback options for the game and design? And you may want to look at this per group member. And if your progress is faster than expected, so things are a little easier, maybe you learned a lot, or you learn a lot during the process, and you are a more effective Unity developer, gameplay programmer than you anticipated, what stretch goals would you add to this? So here I'm getting you to think about how the scope of the game, how it expands and moves around. Usually this extra progress, stretch goals are pretty rare, and time loss is more significant in the class than we all would like it to be. All right, so there's the basic document. Do you have any questions on this initial plan? We'll be going over examples of them in class today. So when we go over game projects, we will look at the plan documents, the initial plans of those projects briefly. All right, there doesn't seem to be anything immediate. So we will move on. So I'm in our class GitHub repository, and there are a couple of interesting documents here. So first is the game project MD, and next is the game document template. So first, your game project MD. So it's an idea of what this is about, right? So basically the things we had just talked about. In this project, you will be designing and creating a game in Unity in teams of 5. While you will be responsible for designing the overall direction of your game, you will be given the following constraints. Each member will have a role and sub-role. Each member will be responsible for creating at least one gameplay system. Each member will be responsible for describing the work in their team in your team's design document, which is the project document.md that we will look at next. All roles and sub-roles must be assigned across your team's members. The caveat there is if you decide to have custom roles that are more tailored to your specific game, we will vet those and usually allow those. Your game assets and source code, your source code and project files will be placed in a publicly accessible GitHub repository. If you want to somehow take your game commercially, you want to think about that beforehand and let us know. We can work with you on a private version of your repositories, but the default is public. So here's the idea about grading. So the projects, each individual score will be graded on a 100-point scale based off your main role and sub role. And then, so most of your grade will be about your implementation in main role and sub role. And then 30% or 30 points of the 100 will be overall quality of the game. So here we're striking a balance between the game itself, the artifact you're all working together to create, and the individual responsibilities of being part of the game team. So there's submission information. You'll see more about this, particularly there's a list of deliverables and project information that I would like from you in the game product template. But we want to make sure that you have a GitHub repository with a good gitignore file inside of the Git outside of the Unity project folder. All right, so let's talk a bit about roles. So as we've discussed, you will be taking on a main role and a sub role. So the first main role is producer. So the producer is the coordinator of the team. They are the ones that handle the planning documents, things like scheduling. You get to decide on your Git-based workflow. You will help coordinate the meeting and the teams. So a lot of making a game in a group or making any large software is about coordinating people. And so this is part of that. I should also note that every person on the project should submit meaningful code to the project. We're looking at every person writing probably a few hundred lines of code, some people more. So I anticipate the producer will have fewer direct programming responsibilities, but will be pinch hitting, working with other team members, and helping to submit code, perhaps doing a lot of pair programming with the other folks. There's a lot of code that happens in games, a lot of areas where you program. We have the major roles, we have the sub roles. That covers a lot of the game space, but there's still significant amounts of programming that fall outside of these preordained, pre-described roles, these described roles. So this is a good place those are good places for the producer to pitch in. All right, user interface and input. So here you're responsible for what the user sees and touches. So the heads-up display, health meters, damage bars in the game, ammo display, currency displays. You're also responsible for implementing controller and mouse and keyboard input. I recommend you do both. You can go pretty deep on this. So sometimes this can be fairly cursory, like in a 2D platformer. The user interface can be important, but not really super difficult. It can be a pretty normative place to have programming input. Maybe this is someone with less experience can do user interface on an easier project. But if you're making something like a 3D game with a nuanced camera, or if you are making some simulation game that has a lot of user interface involved, or if you're doing something like a couch co-op game with split screen, this can be a really difficult and detailed role. Movement and physics. You've all been dealing with things like movement physics so far. You've dealt with scripts moving projectiles. You've dealt with collision detection. You've dealt with moving a captain around. You've dealt with all the camera controllers we've made for Exercise 2. So movement and physics, you have a good idea of what that entails. A lot of things move around the world. You may the reason it says movement in physics, you may also be responsible for NPC movement. Pardon me. Looks like I didn't adequately delete everything. There we go. Input was one of the things we separated from user interface for previous class. No longer. It was weak. It is now combined with user interface. All right, animation and visuals. Those of you who are artists who want to really shine in this role, this is probably the place for you. So you can create assets. You can use Creative Commons assets. Anything you have license to. If you want to pay for some assets, go ahead. It's fine, as long as you have the license to it. You're also responsible for the scripts and dealing with the Unity systems that involve animation. So make sure that you break down the look and feel of your space and look at the number of assets you need. This can be a pretty detailed and role that is fairly difficult. So make sure you are pretty confident before you go into animation visuals. That's so much of the presentation of your game. And animation visuals will also work well with the user interface, the HUD portion. So you'll probably be working together, the design and visuals for user interfaces. I encourage you strongly to make a visual style guide for your game as part of this role. Having your game be successful, even as a prototype, it would behoove you to have a visual coherency to your game, visual polish to your game. That really can help if you want to use this game as a portfolio piece, which I strongly encourage. You're going to do a lot of work for this project, a lot of code. It'll be something you can show off. It'll be something publicly visible. Get all the credit you can. If it looks better, then the curb appeal or first impressions of your work will be even more outstanding. Game logic. For those aspiring game designers, this is the place for you. This is where you'll be dealing with your combat logics, your interactions between game elements, the definitions of your mechanics. All of that is here. So you will be responsible for documenting and implementing the basic interactions in the game, the basic logics of your game. So that was the 5 main roles. On to the sub roles. Audio. So for most of the games in the class, audio tends to be something that is less involved than animation and visuals. So here you're responsible for defining the game's sound style, its audio landscape. You're responsible for procuring assets and implementing the scripts to play those assets. You will document the sound style. You'll provide the sources and license for all your audio assets, and you should implement the audio system for your game. Gameplay testing. This is an important one. For those of you who want to delve into this world of user testing and human-computer interaction, this is a good place for you. If anyone's done any user studies in the past in class or done any user methods class, this could be a place to show off your skills. So I provided you with a basic layout here, and this can be modified depending on your game type. I'm open to interpretation or open to new ideas here. So you should have 10 non-team members play your game. There is an observation and player testing comments form taken from Tracy Fullerton's game design workshop. You should have them play your game, and you should help them fill out this form. It has a lot of questions in it. Oops. And then you should analyze the results. So here we're trying to understand the impact of your game and your design decisions. So you provide this gameplay testing is meaningful. It provides a really valuable set of insights to making the game better. And while we're asking for this at the end of the quarter, and some people will do this right at the end, and won't be able to iterate on the feedback from it, it's still important to collect it and talk about it. It's part of the self-critique process. All right, and for those of you who are writers and care about the story, or who are very concerned about the story of the game, this may be a sub-role for you. Here you are responsible for designing and embedding the game story into the gameplay experience. So this isn't just the textual trapping, the instruction manual blurb about the game, which is important, and you should have that as well. But this is embedding story and communicating the narrative of your world to the player through gameplay. Things like adding in signifiers, signs, cultural artifacts in the game, working with the audio designer and the visual designer, or the visuals and animation role, working with those to embed story within all of those game elements will be very important. This could be the text that NPCs speak in your game. This could be the working with the artist to make sure the assets, the characters, the items, every instantial thing in the game fits the story, is diegetic, has a place in the narrative. And then we have the role for the press kit and trailer. So this is the person responsible for creating the press kit, which we have a document on making press kits and trailers, and making a trailer video for the game. Usually these are between 1 and 2 minutes long, showing off your gameplay, story, getting people jazzed about your game. So what we're trying to do here is give you a sense of the indie game dev experience, or the small studio game dev experience, where press kit and trailer is certainly part of it. And finally, game feel. We'll be talking more about game feel as the course goes on, but this, for game feel, this is really about polish as well. So you can, this is game feel and game polish. So after you've defined your mechanics, we want to make sure they feel good. They feel juicy. There's a sense of polish and play in your game. You want to document how you've done this. Things like adding momentum to the jump, things like adding in a particular type of momentum into your camera controller. This can happen in all areas of the game. It can be working with the user interface and input role to add in that little bit of juice, the exact right transition time between swapping user interface elements. This can talking with the audio designer to add in just the right audio sound for closing that context window or for picking up an item. So game feel is a little more diffuse, but one of the more important sub roles. All right, do you have any questions about the roles and sub roles or the rubric for the game project? All right, I don't see anyone typing, so we'll move on. I clicked on the wrong link. Gameplay programming. So the project document template. So this is a document you will add to your GitHub repository. And this is what we'll be looking at. This will be the place we go to as the source of information for grading. This is the starting point. So you'll want to rename this to be project document. You could even put this as your readme.md if you would like. You may also want something a little more forward facing, a little more public facing instead of this document for your readme. All right, so first, replace this with the title of your game. Add in a paragraph length summary of your game. So you can also think of this as perhaps even the elevator pitch. We're going to ask for some project resources. So we want a web playable version of your game. Notice this link goes to itch.io. It's a great place to put your Unity export, your web export of your game. Trailer. Traditionally, these go on YouTube. I'm happy to, I want to keep a playlist of these videos. So if you have a trailer, please, I'm happy to load these on my YouTube space with in a playlist. A lot of times, like, we'll get some interesting trailers and we'll get press kits and we'll get playable versions of the game, and then they will be deleted later, which is a real shame, or just be disabled for inactivity. So I like to keep these around and alive. So make sure we do respect to your trailers and keep them around. A link to your press kit. So this goes to dopresskit.io, which you'll see in the press kit and trailer document. It's a quick and easy way to make your own press kit. Fill in the forms. And then the project proposal. So we looked at this document. This right now links to the document that I gave you, the one you copy from. You should change that link to be the copy of your initial document, your project plan. And I'll give you a place to place those Google Docs. well, I'll share a folder in the gameplay programming public folder for you to place your documents in. Gameplay explanation. So your game will be nuanced. It will have some interesting play. How do we play your game to best experience it? So how should your game be played? This is your cue for us as the grading team and for your fellow class members to get the most out of your game. So your games will be buggy. There will be rough edges. There's no way to make a really good polished game in the time that we have, but you can get a really good start. So we want to know how to best experience your game, how to work past the rough edges. This can even be a walkthrough if you'd like. You could also add another section below gameplay explanation if there are things you did that were meaningful in the game that you've developed, that you've created, that don't fit into the major role structures. So we want to make sure you have a place for it. Make sure you put that right up here. All right. So main roles. These are where you will put your documentation, your information to describe to us what you did for each role. This is where we're going to go to. This is going to be our major place, our touchstone place for where we are going to start grading your main role and sub roles. So present well here. Show documents, show links, put in images. All this is pretty important. So here are some cues for you to help. I don't think it's worth going through this directly, but feel free to look through this. Link to scripts, do permalinks, provide your sources and licenses. All this is where you will document how you did your roles. So we'll be looking at the project documents for the game, for the games that we'll review in class from previous offerings of this class. So we'll look at the initial plan documents. We'll look at the project document templates, and we'll be, when they have web versions accessible, playing the games during class today. And that should round out expectations here. All right. So I think that's the overall version of this that you need to know right now. I'll be sending out information on due dates and deadlines today. There's a little bit of planning up in the air, particularly around the holiday next week, President's Day on Monday, that I need to suss out. But other than that, you should expect your game project to be due late next week. Your initial plan to be due late next week. So we'll give you just under 2 weeks to handle this. I know a lot of you have been doing the due diligence to already start forming teams and get ideas together. We have been encouraging this during office hours and even a little bit in class. So a lot of you have a head start. So I feel pretty confident that we can get these plans done. You can even start prototyping. I encourage you to start working right away. I don't think we ever rejected a game project plan. We basically want these to help you manage scope and perhaps push your ideas a little farther. We'll help you refine these as opposed to reject them wholesale. We want you to be able to make the games you want to make. We're not here to judge your game design aesthetics or your interest aesthetics. We're here to take your interests and to help refine them. So if you have a reasonable team and you have at all even a reasonable core game idea, you should be in pretty good shape for this. Now we will be grading these. Basically, you have to give us enough information and context to make our determinations, to provide our critique, to provide you a good base on which to create your game. So And when we go through the examples today in the lecture, we'll look at some good game design documents, some good game project initial plans, I should say. We're treating these as mini game design documents for the purpose of this class. For those of you who do the game logic role, you may want to create your own game design document. We'll have a class on game design documents probably on Thursday to help you get started and get thinking about this. And game design documents can come in many forms, from, like graphic novel, webcomic type of looking things to big old blocks of text to wikis. So there's a lot of formats that you can use. I encourage you to pick the one that's right for your project and team and workflow. All right. Any questions? Hopefully all this was fairly straightforward. I don't think there was anything particularly tricky here. The basic idea is that we want to help you bootstrap a meaningful project that could be a good portfolio piece for you while you do gameplay programming, while you do the work that the class involves, the class is about. Yes, thank you for reminding me, Kyle. These will have a theme. So it is an optional theme, but we will be perhaps giving out participation codes or maybe a little bit of fun analysis and awards if you engage with the theme. Much like game jams have themes, we want to give you some core idea to perhaps ideate around. And I have no idea what the theme is. This will be a surprise for me. I'm looking forward to it. We're lucky to have a TA that has significant game design experience, significant game jam experience, heck, a master's in game design from a reputable university, American University. So that'll be very nice to have that in the mix. All right. I see no questions. I am assuming that you all have a good basis from which to move forward. So I think we'll leave it there. All right, everyone. I will see you all in class. Take care.